What a remarkable weekend. And my hat is off to the American military. Some were wounded in this, and prayers for their quick recovery. According to the government of Cuba, 32 Cuban security forces were killed in Operation Absolute Resolve, but we haven't had that confirmed by American sources yet. But apparently a couple of the special forces that entered the Maduro compound to take the dictator and his spouse out and put them into American custody, get them to Brooklyn, where he appeared in court earlier today, were wounded. Our prayers for their family. More details on that as it occurs. First thing I want to say is it was absolutely legal. Now, I realize we have Steelers fans, and they might not even be sober yet because of the way that they won yesterday. Article 2, Section 1, first sentence, the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. Article 2, Section 2, first sentence, the president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy of the United States. You know what that means? That means he runs the Department of Justice, which had an indictment against Nicolas Maduro and his wife for many years now. So it's a law enforcement operation wrapped inside of a military operation that got it done, and it was absolutely legal. But for the benefit of the people who've been listening to mainstream media and a little bit confused about can the United States do that, I could take you all the way back to Jefferson ordering the Louisiana Purchase when he didn't even think it was constitutional for the Congress and he to agree to do it. But let's just stay in the last 50 years. Gerald Ford and the Mayaguez incident, May 12 through 15th, 1975. No prior authorization from Congress for grabbing that boat. President Carter ordered Operation Eagle Claw on 24 April 1980. It did not succeed, the famous Desert One debacle, but he ordered it without telling Congress. President Reagan and the Grenada Operation, Urgent Fury, October 25, 1983. We could talk about George H.W. Bush in Panama, and I have, as many people have, in December and January 1989 and 1990 to get Mr. Noriega out of there and into a U.S. jail. We can talk about Bill Clinton's 78-day bombing campaign of Serbia in March to June of 1999. We can talk about President Obama bombing Libya, though he was, quote, leading from behind in words attributed to him. Those airstrikes began on March 19, 2011. Operation Neptune Spear, May 2nd of 2011, to get bin Laden. Again, didn't tell anyone before we did it. And of course he could do it. Some people will say, well, that had the AUFM behind it, but AUMF. And they are right, but it does demonstrate we don't have to tell Congress. The strikes on Soleimani and al-Baghdadi, which the President Trump mentioned from his first term in Saturday's extraordinary press conference, both of them, you don't tell Congress. It's absolutely the use of the armed forces. It's covered by the Constitution. President Biden ordering Syrian airstrikes in February of 2011. Again, no notification of Congress. First, the Donald Trump effect, Trump derangement syndrome, has completely shattered the ability of the American media and the Democratic Party to cover the obvious. He's a bad guy. He's an evil guy. He ran a cartel. So did his wife. He looted billions of dollars from Venezuela, which we'll try and get back for the Venezuelan people. Moreover, the three most important things that were said in the press conference the president did on Saturday morning, which I listened to live while I was trundling down at Huntington Beach. Number one, something Secretary Rubio said. President Trump does not play games. Number two, something President Trump also said on that day. Secretary Rubio said he doesn't play games. President Trump said life is a deal. And by that he meant everything is on the table, and if I'm negotiating with you, I make you a couple of offers and you don't take them, you're stuck with the consequences. Iran learned that with Operation Midnight Hammer in June of last year when their nuclear weapons program was destroyed by our B-2s after the 11-day war begun by Israel with Iran during the course of the larger war that Israel actually had launched against it by Iran and its proxies in October of 2023. But I would point out, all of this is absolutely with precedent. It's not unprecedented. It is an unprecedented level of complexity as far as I can tell. Listening to General Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I was astonished by the number of moving pieces here. And I'm astonished it stayed secret. Now, apparently there are reports that both the Washington Post and the New York Times had a heads up of the operation, but were requested by the Pentagon and the president not to say anything, and they didn't because it would have put our men and women in the armed services at great risk. The element of surprise was essential to grabbing the cartelista. And Mr. Maduro pleaded innocent today, right? We don't believe that. Second thing that the president said after he said life is a negotiation, life is a deal. He said on Air Force One yesterday, when asked by one of our just terrific reporters, what happens next? He said, that depends. Of course, that's the right answer. You know, we don't know what the regime, which has not been changed. All right, we grabbed Maduro and his wife, and the ability to do that and to blink out Caracas at night and to take out their air control system and to get special forces in and out in 2.5 hours sends a message to the acting president, who is Maduro's flunky, to the Interior Ministry. And their Interior Minister is not like our Doug Burgum. He's not worried about the national parks. Their Interior Minister is the secret police. And there's a lot of secret police in Venezuela. I'll talk with Dan Rundy about that later. What does he do? What does the head of the military do? Maduro depended upon both of them to secure power through 2 elections that he lost. And so he's a corrupt dictator. When the president says he took our money, he means he expropriated American assets and did not pay for them. Any sovereign country in the world can expropriate anything they want, but they have to pay for them. And we've seen this many, many times since 1959 and Fidel. A lot of people expropriate assets. Iran expropriated American assets in the 1979 Iran Revolution, the one that's coming undone in real time. And I'll keep you updated throughout the course of the show as to what is happening in Iran, where the protests and the riots have gone on. At least 16 people have been murdered there by the mullahs, the thugs, over the weekend, according to Reuters. I'll keep you posted on that throughout the day. But to go back to what the president said, when it depends. If Venezuela is talking to Secretary Rubio and Director Ratcliffe, who runs the CIA, as well as, of course, people in the White House. Secretary Rubio is also the National Security Advisor, and I'll have former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien on later in the program, Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Cotton, on later in the program. If they are talking to American officials and saying, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to shoot dissidents. We're going to hold elections. Chevron can begin to upgrade all the installations that are here. We're not going to steal any more money, and we're not going to kill people in the streets. And the Chavista movement, which is 20 to 30% of the population, is not going to riot and try and kill America. There are 23,000 Americans in Venezuela right now. 23,000. So the word has gone forth. Do not threaten or injure those Americans. And I would be worried if, of course, I had a family member. I don't. But if I had a family member in one of the many industries America has in Venezuela, if I had a cruise ship in Venezuela, and cruise ships do call on the islands of Venezuela, I would be worried. But only if they're morons, because, and they might be. I don't know that they're not. Iran has turned out to be full of morons. If they're morons, they will threaten an American, because, you know, Donald Trump won't put up with that. The Don Road doctrine is, if you kill an American, we'll kill you. Most recently, ISIS in Syria killed 2 American soldiers, 1 civilian, and we kicked the living daylights out of them for 2 days with airstrikes. If they threaten an American, that threat will be dealt with. That's Operation Midnight Hammer. The Don Road doctrine is pretty doggone clear. Do not kill or threaten Americans. Do not send drugs into our country. Do not send terrorists into our country, because we got a long arm. We got a military that is second to none in the world. It's so astonishing, the complexity of that operation. And unlike the Biden administration, we have the will and the ability to use the military that we are blessed with. Unlike the Obama administration, it's not all talk, blah, 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 blah. It's action after an offer to negotiate. Many offers were made to Maduro. It's been widely reported now he turned them all down. He's a billionaire who can't get to his billions. His son's got $1 billion, allegedly, according to some of the reports. I'll cover it all with people throughout the day, beginning with Bethany Shondark, right after that's her X handle. It's Bethany Mandel from the Mom Wars. Just got back from Israel. I want to know how she's reacting as an average American mom who's watching this and wondering, what's it mean for Israel? What's it mean for China? What's it mean for Russia? What's it mean for everybody who would play with the American people or their military anywhere in the world or take our people hostages. It means Donald Trump's got your number, and if he calls, answer and listen very closely to what he says. Because again, to quote Secretary of State Rubio and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, Donald Trump doesn't play games. I want to say a special hello to a couple of new affiliates. We've got WNRP in Florida, and we are very happy to have WNRP in Florida. It is in Pensacola. Welcome. Great to have you on board. 92.3 WNRP. And WMKT, the talk station in upper northern Michigan also. So we're in Michigan and Florida. We just keep spreading out all over the country. So we're glad to have you, especially on a newsy day like today. Got a lot coming up. I want to start with Secretary Rubio yesterday on Meet the Press, cut number 13, please.
Number one, most of the experts that people have on television, I watch these experts and it's clown hour. Okay, these are people that have focused their entire career on the Middle East or some other part of the world because that's where all the action was. Very few of them know anything about Venezuela or the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela looks nothing like Libya. It looks nothing like Iraq. It looks nothing like Afghanistan. It looks nothing like the Middle East other than the Iranian agents that are running through there plotting against America. Okay? These are Western countries with long traditions among their at a people-to-people and cultural level and ties to the United States. So there's nothing like that. So I think people need to stop ascribing the apples and oranges here, the apples of the Middle East to the oranges of the Western Hemisphere.
But do you...
Number two, this is about the national interest of the United States. And what I'm confident of is we are in a safer and better place because we're taking it seriously. The alternative would have been to leave Maduro there as an indicted drug trafficker, illegitimate president, running the country, open invitation for all of our adversaries to do whatever they want against the United States from Venezuela. That was not going to continue. The alternative would have been to allow a drug trafficker to continue to use national territory and elements of nation-state power to further drug trafficking organizations. Read the indictment. This guy used the levers of their security apparatus not to arrest drug traffickers, but to cooperate and facilitate the trafficking of drugs for the purpose of getting them into the United States. And that's going to stop.
Good for Marco Rubio. And Secretary Rubio did this on every network. He just rolled over the dummy network anchors who don't really understand much about what the United States can do and how it can do it and why it is legal and the precedents for it. And they were schooled by him repeatedly on every network. It's not like it's unique to NBC. And the experts who are waving their hands around are like, and the Democrats who are saying it's illegal, they're just not correct. And they're either ignorant, stupid, or deceitful. All right? You take your choice. Ignorant, they don't know anything about the Constitution. They don't know anything about the precedents I talked about. Stupid, they don't understand the precedents. Or deceitful. They're not telling you the truth because they cannot bring themselves to say, my gosh, what a great operation, what a good thing for the United States that happened this weekend. Now, I do want to play for you a little bit. I had to do a Fox and Friends Saturday hit. All right, so I'm on the West Coast. It means I got up at 2:30 in the morning expecting to do a hit at 3:15 in the morning, California time. So I had set the coffee maker, and I had some coffee in me, and I opened up the Journal and the other things I read before I do a hit, and there is the news that we've grabbed Maduro. And so it's only an hour after it had become public, so I read into it, and then I go do the hit. And this is how it began on Saturday morning. Remember, it's about 3:15, 3:20 in the morning, cut number one.
We're bringing in Hugh Hewitt, former assistant White House counsel and Fox News contributor. Hugh, good morning to you. A stunning operation overnight. You were former White House counsel. And as I suspected we were likely going to see this morning, Democrats are coming out and challenging the legality of this operation. We already have Congressman Jim McGovern saying that this was unjustified, that was carried out, and that it was not authority. He said without authorization from Congress, and with the vast majority of Americans opposed to military action, Trump just launched an unjustified illegal strike on Venezuela. I suspect we'll hear other Democrat voices challenging it as well. What do you make of it?
Well, good morning. And Jim McGovern's an old friend of mine. He's an old Massachusetts liberal, my age. He's been wrong for as long as I've been right. And in fact, this is well within President Trump's Article 2 authority. It is a replay of the 1989 Operation Just Cause that George H.W. Bush launched to capture and spirit Noriega out of Panama. He was also a narco-cartelist tyrant, and he ended up spending the rest of his days in jail. Here's the deal. The president can do this. It's very impressive. It certainly follows through, as Donald Trump does, on a threat, as he did with Iran last summer. He said, I'm going to act if you don't stop building nukes. He told Maduro, I'm going to come and get you if you don't stop tyrannizing your country. As Ms. Machado said on tape, Juan Guaido said 4 years ago, Maduro has been a ruthless tyrant dictator since he took over for Hugo Chavez, who was himself a dictator. This is great news for the 30 million people of Venezuela. I am mostly concerned for the 20,000 plus Americans who are in Venezuela right now, because it's still a police state. There's still a Cuban Security Service-backed police operation there. And hopefully the people of Venezuela, who have risen up time and time again against the dictators Maduro and Chavez, rise up today in the streets like the people in Iran are doing. And bravo to President Trump. It's well within his presidential powers. So our friends on the left, who have been wrong about international operations since Reagan invaded Grenada, this is good news for everyone who loves freedom, and especially... It goes on for a long time. And I just want to tell you, that's been my line from the moment I learned about it. It's my understanding of the Constitution. I've been teaching the Constitution for almost 30 years at Chapman Law School, and I wasn't White House counsel. I was assistant counsel in the White House. They got a big promotion for me. That will be news to my bosses, Dick and Fred, that I was promoted by Fox and Friends. I was also on with Brian Kilmeade last night with Danny Pletka, and we'll talk about that. I wanted to yield all my time, but I want to first play for you the only sane Democrat, as far as I can tell, Senator John Fetterman, Pennsylvania Democrat, cut number 17.
So for me, it's like, why as a Democrat, we can't just acknowledge that it was successful, and now it absolutely was a risk. And now that's why we're going to continue to monitor it, and I'm going to remain open to a better outcome for Venezuela.
Too bad for our tape, but I'm glad for John Fetterman. I think John Fetterman saying the right thing represents how Democrats could actually change their approach. Here is UN Ambassador Michael Waltz yesterday, cut number 6. He's talking about what it might mean for all of the region.
The United States wants a better future for Venezuela. We believe a better future for the people of Venezuela and for the people of the region and the world is stabilizing the region and making the neighborhood that we live in a much better and safer place. And this is why millions of Venezuelans that have fled this brutal regime are celebrating and cheering around the world as this body pontificates, including those celebrating are including in my home state of Florida, where hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans have fled this regime's brutality. I want to reiterate, President Trump gave diplomacy a chance. He offered Maduro multiple off-ramps. He tried to de-escalate.
But Maduro would not take that off-ramp, and as Marco Rubio said in the press conference on Saturday morning, President Trump does not play games. And if you're on one end of a receiving end of a deal, you might negotiate, but don't mess around. He does not play games. I was on with Brian Kilmeade last night, along with Danny Pletka of the American Enterprise Institute. Let's play as much of that as we can in segment here. Cut number 2.
Let's ask these tough questions to the host of the Hugh Hewitt Show, Hugh Hewitt, and Fox News contributor as well, along with distinguished senior fellow with AEI, Danielle Pletka. Danielle, let's start with you. What should the next steps be in Venezuela?
Look, I think we need to figure out whether the vice president is listening to Donald Trump, whether she is actually going to be serious about moving the country towards free and fair elections. If she is, all to the good, then mission accomplished for the United States. But that's the big test. Otherwise, she remains in a partnership with Iran, with China, with our enemies, and that's not what we want. So we need to see this, and it's got to happen fast.
Hugh, you think this vice president could run things? Because the president seems to have done a background check on her and is impressed with her economic background.
President said on Air Force One today, Brian, when asked what comes next, it depends. And I think the president is being candid as usual. Two other things I would reference that have been said in the last 24 hours. Secretary Rubio said in the press conference yesterday, Donald Trump doesn't play games. And at the end of the press conference, President Trump got a little bit philosophical. He said, all of life is a deal. Right now, the question is, what deal are the remaining Chavistas? And it's about 20% of the population. They got a lot of guns. They've got a lot of opportunity to wreak havoc. What are they willing to do in pursuit of free, fair, and frequent elections, free trade, the rule of law, market-based economy, production facility? How cooperative do they want to be? And I think they're looking around that very secure base with 32 dead Cubans. That's what the Cuban government announced tonight, that were supposedly the very elite security team surrounding Maduro. And they've got to be asking themselves, do they really want to argue with Donald Trump at this point, or do they want to have Secretary Rubio give them some advice on how to extricate themselves out of this socialist hellhole that they built over 15 years?
So Danielle, before I have you comment on that, I want you to hear what Marco Rubio has said when asked, why didn't you get everybody out, the whole cabinet, Interior Minister, Defense Secretary, everybody, including the Vice President? Listen to this exchange on Face the Nation.
I'm confused. Are they still wanted by the United States? Why didn't you arrest them if you are taking out the narco-terrorist regime?
You're confused? I don't know why that's confusing to you.
They're still in
It's
power.
very simple. You're not going to go in and wrap up. But you can't go. You're going to go in and suck up 5 people. They're already complaining about this one operation. Imagine the howls we would have from everybody else if we actually had to go and stay there 4 days to capture 4 other people. We got the top priority. The number one person on the list was the guy who claimed to be the president of the country that he was not, and he was arrested along with his wife, who was also indicted.
So Danielle, he kind of just made her look foolish by her question. And the Interior Minister evidently is a bad guy. The Defense Minister is a bad guy. And some people aren't impressed with the Vice President. What do you think?
So look, there are a lot of bad guys. On the other hand, I think Marco Rubio did make Margaret look a little bit foolish, because he's exactly right. This was a police operation. We went in, we took out the president, the falsely claimed president who stole an election. We took out his wife, who was complicit in his crimes. Yes, absolutely. There are other people in the regime in Venezuela who are people who should be under arrest, who should be indicted, but they are now faced with that choice. And I think that's exactly what Hugh laid out. You know, look, when we talk about transitions to democratic governance from tyranny, it's not just a simple process. And the first thing that needs to happen, and we can say this about Iran and we can say this about Venezuela, is that the security forces need to make a decision. Who are we with? Are we with the people, or are we with the regime? Once that decision is made in the right direction, and I think the Trump administration has laid this out to them, they've given them the option, they've said, do the right thing here and everything will be okay. Do the wrong thing, and we continue to have options, not just against the vice president, but against the interior minister, who's so pally with the Chinese and the Iranians, as well as the defense minister, who's a completely bad guy as well.
Pause it right there. We'll play more of that in the rest of the show, because Danny, I want to yield my time all to Danny Pletka. She knows what she's talking about on military operations, and I know a little bit, but not much. Dan Rundy will be along an hour at 3, senior fellow at CSIS, actually knows Latin America, South America, as well as any American analyst. I haven't seen him anywhere because, of course, legacy media doesn't know who to ask, so they get good generals. And I saw Admiral Stab on CNN yesterday talking about how absolutely spectacular the military side of this is. But the questions from the Sunday show anchors were just so subpar. They really don't know anything. There are 2 stories going on in the world that are major. Of course, the United States capture of Maduro and his spouse. And in Iran, there are convulsions on the streets. To talk about the latter and maybe get a comment on the former, I'm joined by Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States. He's also the founder of the Israel Advocacy Group. Dr. Oren, welcome. Let's start with the latter. How do you react to the remarkable operation conducted by the U.S. military on the wee hours of the morning, Saturday morning?
From an Israeli perspective, Hugh, great news. That's great news. Listen, generally speaking, Israel has an interest in having an America that is willing and able to project power around the world. Even if I would even prefer a president who is critical of Israel, but willing to project power over a president who maybe loves us and unwilling to project power, because that's America's interest. And I think it's not just that Israel's interest; it's also not just Israel's interest. It's every ally of the United States, Germany, South Korea, Japan. We all want that strong, tough, projecting America, and that's what we've seen now in Venezuela. And it's and that increases, that enhances the security of all of us, all of us. And then more specifically, Maduro is a great friend of Iran. A great friend, Hezbollah. Hezbollah operates out of Venezuela. It operates its drug trade out of Venezuela. It's a huge blow to Iran. And it sends an unequivocal message to our common enemies, whether it be Mr. Petro in Colombia, the Cubans. Everyone's on notice now. You don't mess with this guy, and Mr. Trump, meaning. And that redounds to our benefit. It certainly does. And it directly related to what's happening in Iran today.
Well, let's go to what's happening in Iran. I'm hungry for news, and the only place I can find it about up-to-date news in Iran is actually at the Times of Israel, and even it's a little bit behind. AP and Reuters gives us a detail here and a detail there. What sort of a crisis is this for the regime in Iran that they're going through right now?
I think we have to distinguish between what's going on in Iran in the last few days, what's going to happen the next couple of days, and what's happening in the longer term in Iran. Okay, we've seen this film before where people come to the streets and the Iran regime has an MO where they let people sort of blow off steam for a week or two. A couple dozen people may get killed, but finally they're going to come down like the proverbial ton of bricks on this revolt. That's the way it was in 2009. That's the way it was in 2022 with the women's revolt, which was very brutally suppressed. And we're going to see, because this regime has tremendous power at its disposal. It has the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards. It has the army. It has a group of thugs called the Besiege, who will come out with baseball bats and beat these people over the head. They haven't come out with their big guns yet, and they're not going to go quietly into that dark night. I guarantee you. There's a question whether they may want to pick a fight with us in order to detract attention from their domestic woes, maybe try rally the people. That's a possibility, and we have to be very vigilant about that. Okay, so what's happening? They may succeed in suppressing this revolt for a week or two, but the fact of the matter is the longevity of this regime is now very much in question. They have been humiliated by Israel, humiliated by the United States. They have no electricity. They have no water. Their currency, the real, has lost 60% of its worth. Women are no longer wearing head coverings in the street. Its days are numbered one way or the other. And Iran's not coming back. They've now just lost this ally in Venezuela. They've lost Syria. They've lost Lebanon. They've lost Gaza. What's left? What's left for this regime? Not much. And the quicker it goes, the better.
So how do you believe the mullahs and the IRGC understand President Trump's threat to intervene if they kill protesters? What do they hear when they hear that?
I think they not just hear it, they saw what happened with Maduro. And they're going to take it very, very seriously. If I were them, I'd be making my travel plans to Moscow.
Now, there is a element in the West, especially in the United States, arguing that we'll make it worse if we get involved in Iran in any way. For example, strikes on the IRGC or the Besiege headquarters, or if Israel does the same thing. What's your response to that? You only make it worse crowd.
It's like that bag. There was an old Holocaust joke, quote unquote, about two Jews about to be executed by the SS, and the SS officers making fun of them and says, I need last words. And one Jew raises his hand, the other Jew puts the hand down and says, well, hey, we're in enough trouble as it is. Okay? And it's true of many things. We're in enough trouble as it is. I generally speaking, I think it's good that Israel keeps a low profile for the time being. We can help the revolt quietly. But the United States is a superpower. The United States can wield its power in ways that even we can't. And if it would bring about the fall of this regime by some kinetic intervention, I think that's certainly within the power and the proven record of this president.
Now, they've executed almost 2,000 people since the 12-day war. Do you think they are afraid of people within the ordinary Iranian army, which is separate from the IRGC, or even the IRGC deciding maybe Khamenei and the mullahs are not worth the trouble, we want to keep our thing going?
I think after last summer, we'd be foolish not to be afraid, because Israel knew where those scientists were living. They knew where senior commanders were living. They knew where so many of the rockets were situated. The degree to which Israeli intelligence, to say nothing of American intelligence, had penetrated Iranian leadership and the Iranian military and the IRGC is certainly reason for all of those mullahs to be shaken in their boots.
All right, last question, Ambassador Oren. What did you make of the Netanyahu-Trump meetings last week? How were they received in Israel?
Well, they're very well. Listen, I was personally surprised. I thought that the president would be more constrained, given what's happened inside his own White House, inside the MAGA movement, with the criticism that he has not lived up to what he had promised to his voters, that to be put America first, as if getting rid of a brutal drug dictator, or even helping Christians in Nigeria who are threatened with Islamic extremists, is not putting America first. But leave that aside. I thought he'd be more constrained, and he surprised me. He kept that credible military threat on the table, and Hugh, that is the key to everything that's going to happen in the Middle East from now on. Keeping that credible military threat on the table means that Israel could have peace with Lebanon, peace with Syria, who knows, maybe even peace with Iran, and certainly peace with Saudi Arabia. We're in a region where people respect strength, and that's what America is showing here, and through strength, we'll get peace.
Dr. Michael Oren, thank you for joining me. Follow him at Dr. Michael Oren, Dr. Michael Oren on X, the Israel Advocacy Group, founded by Dr. Oren, also worth your attention online. So I want to welcome our new affiliates, and we had two great new affiliates. I don't know who came in last week, but this week we are welcoming News Radio Pensacola 92.3 WNRP. Love the Panhandle, love all you pilots. You folks know I've got a fighter pilot in the family who trained down in Pensacola. And so welcome aboard. Glad to have everyone in that great community. Florida matters a great deal to the program. And hello, Michigan, Northern Michigan, WMKT, 1270 AM, Triple Talk, because it's 1270 AM, 102.3 and 103.3 FM. Welcome aboard the talk station up there in Upper Michigan. I got to tell you, although I went to law school at the University of Michigan and very proud of the law school, I am from Ohio, and my youngest son's middle name is Ohio, and come that game, you may want to skip me a little bit because I'm all in for Ohio State. Yeah, 2025 was a great year for the Buckeyes because we won the national championship and beat Michigan in the same year, so I like that. But welcome to you all who are new to the Hugh Hewitt Network. And, of course, you can always watch on the Salem News Channel as well, or anywhere on the Salem Radio Network or any of our wonderful affiliates. I mentioned I'm in the Relief Factor studio. That's because I take Relief Factor every day. I got 9 in on Saturday, back down at Huntington Beach in California for a few weeks. Got my long run in. It was an unusual day. It rained both before and after my couple of hours at the beach. But I was a little bit stiff yesterday, but got 3 on the Implacable Hill in this morning. Now comes time to take the Relief Factor, which I do every day. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. And my new affiliates, you'll hear me talk about it 3 times a day. I only take it once a day, like right now. I always do it in the first hour. I keep the bag handy, and the studios are available to me on West and East Coast and up north because of Relief Factor. But the reason you ought to try it, 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, is because it does work. Gets rid of the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. You ought to be doing the former, whether it's 500 feet or 9 miles. I got 9 miles in on Saturday. That's the longest I've done in a few months, so I was a little bit stiff at church on Sunday. They actually felt a little ouch in the knee, which is an unusual thing for me, but it's gone. And I got up the Implacable Hill today, and that's in the middle of frustratingly trying to get AFTRA to return my phone calls. They owe me money. The American Federation Television and Radio and Artists. I've been a SAG-AFTRA member forever, and so now they owe me a pension. And just getting someone to call me back, goodness gracious, that's something else. But Relief Factor will get to you right away when you call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, or you head to their website at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Coming up after the break, I've got Ambassador Robert O'Brien. He was the national security advisor to President Trump for the last 2 years of the first Trump presidency, first term. He's still very close with the president. He serves on the president's intelligence advisory board. He's also the chairman of American Global Strategies. We're going to check in with Ambassador O'Brien about what happened in Venezuela over the weekend. Senate chairman of the Intel Committee, Tom Cotton, is also coming along, Republican from Arkansas. Don't miss that. We got a lot ahead, America. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show, especially if you're named Nicolas Maduro and you're sitting in a Brooklyn jail and you got nothing to do. Just stay listening to me. I'm not going anywhere. You did. Joined by Ambassador Robert C. O'Brien, formerly National Security Advisor to President Trump in term one of Donald Trump's first term as president. He is now the chairman of American Global Security, and I'm so glad to have him on after this incredible weekend. Ambassador O'Brien, welcome. Let me begin with getting your reaction to Operation Absolute Resolve.
Well, Hugh, it was good to see you and Happy New Year to you as well, my friend. It was an exquisite operation performed brilliantly by, first of all, our quiet professionals, the CIA guys who prepped the battlefield and were down in the jungles and in the urban areas of Venezuela for months, prepping this thing, getting the intel right, laying the groundwork for traitors and treasonous Venezuelans and patriotic Venezuelans who wanted to see the regime change to cooperate with our guys. And then Delta Force, assisted by the 160th Airborne or Air Assault Regiment and Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, getting down there and into Venezuela in the middle of the night and hauling Maduro out of his fortress and bringing him to justice in America. Just 100% exquisite operation from start to finish.
Do you believe it is legal to have done this?
100%. There's a warrant out for his arrest. He was indicted for drugs. This is not, there were a lot of political reasons to do it, but this was a strict law enforcement effort backed by the Biden administration when they were in office. And it was 100% legal. He's now facing justice. And look, he's pretty lucky to be in a New York court. New York courts haven't been very generous to Donald Trump over the past few years. So, he's got a fair and impartial Clinton-appointed judge, and we'll see how the case goes, but it looks pretty rock solid to me.
Asked on Air Force One yesterday what happens next, President Trump answered, "That depends." I think that made a lot of sense to me, but what do you think it depends upon most, Ambassador O'Brien?
Well, it depends on how Delcy Rodriguez and the Chavistas decided to play this. Look, they're a political party in Venezuela. They have some support, maybe 20-30% of the votes in Venezuela. They can either continue to participate in the process, have free and fair elections, and maybe have a role in the future, or they can be debathified like the Saddam Hussein loyalists were in Iraq. And I think what President Trump and Marco Rubio and John Radcliffe are looking at and Pete Hegseth is what happened in Iraq when we disbanded the Iraqi army and disbanded the government, and that was chaos, and ISIS arose. And I think they're looking for a reasonable transition. There's a very well-formed opposition in Venezuela, led by Edmundo Gonzalez, who was elected president with like 2/3 of the vote. And just last year, he's in Spain. He'll be coming back. You've got Maria Machado, the Nobel Prize winner. You've got Juan Guaido, who is the acting president and the former president of the National Assembly. He's in exile. He'll be coming back to Venezuela. So there's a very strong opposition. I'm sure they'll enter into negotiations with Delcy Rodriguez, the current vice president, and we'll have a transition government and then get on to the business of having free and fair elections.
Now, the Minister of the Interior and the head of their military have not changed, but I assume they are involved in conversations with Secretary Rubio and perhaps the agency. Is that your assumption as well?
That's my assumption. And they'll be doing those negotiations in Spanish. Marco speaks fluent Spanish. He'll be negotiating with him. He knows the region very well. He's got a great team of people, including folks like Mauricio Claver-Carron, who used to work for me, was the envoy for the region for a while, and they'll take care of business. And look, they understand what happened to Maduro. None of those guys want to be sitting in a New York courtroom. So they've got an opportunity here to play ball and cooperate and potentially preserve a political future for themselves in Venezuela.
Secretary Rubio on Saturday in that extraordinary press conference said President Trump does not play games. End of quote. You worked with him closely for 2 years as his NSA at the end of his first term. How do you read President Trump does not play games?
Well, Marco's exactly right. He's got my old position as well as being Secretary of State, the first person since Henry Kissinger to hold both offices. And the poor guy's working his tail off, but he's doing a great job. And what he means is this: is Donald Trump always presents the parties with a fair deal. He's a incredibly reasonable, pragmatic man, and in this case, he offered Maduro several off ramps. He could have gone to Moscow or Beijing or Havana and left and left on his own terms and turned things over. He decided not to. Decided to play a tough guy with Donald Trump, and he thought he could leverage us with his illegal immigration, sending Trinidad Aragua guys to the United States, sending cocaine and fentanyl to undermine us, inviting Hezbollah and Iran and China into the region. He thought all those things would give him an advantage. They didn't. Donald Trump doesn't play games, and he called his bluff. And Maduro's now in a Brooklyn jail and a New York City courthouse. And so, Trump gave him a lot of opportunities. He didn't take them. And look, this is what happens. It happened to Baghdadi. It happened to Soleimani. Happened to a lot of others when they didn't take the deal. They lost. It happened to the Ayatollahs a few months ago with the Operation Midnight Hammer with the nuclear program. Trump said, "Look, open your facilities to full inspections, and stop making a bomb, and we'll leave you alone." And the Iranians gave us the middle finger, and they saw what happened.
Now, the most extraordinary statement in that press conference, I listened to it live, is there's no transcript, so I'm doing this from memory. President Trump either said, all of life is a deal or life is a deal, meaning everything is a negotiation. Is that the essence of Donald Trump right there?
Very, very much so. I mean, look, and again, it goes back to my comment. He's not an ideologue. He's a very pragmatic guy. He wants his only ideology is a deep love for America. Donald Trump loves America like nobody I've ever met. Kind of like Ronald Reagan, and he wants what's best for his country, and he'll cut deals. I mean, he's shown that. He's shown he was very reasonable with Kim Jong-un. He was very reasonable with Xi Jinping recently. He's offered Putin a great deal, and Putin's refusing that deal, which is kind of surprising to me. So he's always willing to make a deal for peace and to end the killing. And war and these raids are a last option for President Trump. He would far prefer doing a deal and doing things peacefully. And I think we've seen that. But if you push him too far, like Maduro did, he found out what happens.
I will come back to Venezuela in a moment, but the president has also made a threat to Iran that if they kill protesters, and 14 people are alleged to be dead, according to Reuters over the weekend, as Iran convulses with protests, he will take action. What should the Ayatollah Khamenei and the IRGC understand about that threat?
Well, look, I saw today that the Ayatollah is already making plans to go to Moscow if President Trump enforces his edict. So that's probably good planning. Surprisingly, the Iranian people, who should be wealthy and doing well, have had a very difficult time economically. They can't get water. They're lacking foodstuffs. They said the Ayatollah's got $95 billion stored away that he's going to take with him to Russia, which is crazy. But so I think the Ayatollah and the mullahs are already making plans to get out of Dodge if they crack down on these protesters, which they apparently are doing. There was some open source information in the news. I don't know what it means. That a lot of the 160th Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, were moving to England and moving to Europe, which they did before the last attack on Iran. So, we'll have to see what happens. But I don't think the president's going to sit back and watch innocent people be killed like Obama did in the Green Revolution when he sided with the mullahs and the Ayatollahs over the people of Iran. I think the president would rather side with the people of Iran over the mullahs than the ayatollahs.
Okay, let me go back to Venezuela. The last American oil company operating there is Chevron. The others were expropriated and they were screwed. They won international arbitration awards. It is a country's right to expropriate industries, but they have to pay for them. And they've been screwed. What do you think Chevron ought to do? Ought it to be standing by and willing to rebuild that what is basically rusted out 25 years? We got a minute left, Ambassador.
Yeah, 100%. Chevron's CEO Worth is a very smart guy. Chevron's hung in there under very difficult circumstances. A lot of people criticized him for it. I was actually in favor of Chevron staying there and keeping an American presence, hoping that something like this would happen. So Chevron can be the lead, and I think the other American oil companies should get in there. But again, this is not to take the oil from the Venezuelan people. This is to produce the oil for the Venezuelan people, make Venezuela great again, make Venezuela rich again, make the people healthy, wealthy, and happy, and at the same time give the American oil companies a chance to produce and make a profit as well on the contracts that they own. So
Ambassador Robert C.
win-win
O'Brien, former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump, still a member of the Presidential Advisory Board on Intel and the Chairman of American Global Strategy. Thanks for spending time with us on a very busy news day. I know you're in demand everywhere, and I appreciate the time. Old friend, Ambassador Robert O'Brien, thank you. Joined down by United States Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. Senator Cotton is chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee as well as of the Republican Conference. Senator Cotton, welcome. Happy New Year to you. Can I start with just your reaction to Operation Absolute Resolve?
Happy New Year to you, Hugh, and to all your listeners. It was a very happy New Year achievement. Early Saturday morning, an amazing operation by our military and intelligence professionals to remind not just Nicolas Maduro, but every bad guy around the world that the long arm of American justice is long indeed. It's hard to overstate how exceptionally well executed this operation was, but that's really become kind of the hallmark of President Trump's military operations over 5 years in office. If you think about the raid to kill the ISIS leader in Syria, to kill Iran's terrorist mastermind in Iraq, to blow up Iran's nuclear program last June, and now to capture Nicolas Maduro, all were flawlessly executed and involved no loss of American life and greatly advanced America's national interest. This actually may be the most impressive of all when you hear how General Kane described so many different elements of our joint force, and the fact that the capturing and exfiltrating the target is in some ways harder than killing one or destroying something. So kudos to all those who are involved. I don't think you can overstate what a great operation it was.
Now, Senator Cotton, you are a part of the Group of Eight. As chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, along with your House counterpart, the ranking Democrat, I think it's Mark Warner, and the ranking Democrat in the House, and the leadership of both parties in the House and the Senate. When did you first get notice that this had happened? I know you weren't warned beforehand for security reasons, but when did you first find out?
When Mrs. Cotton, who's a lighter sleeper than I, began elbowing me in the side on 3:30 Saturday morning Central Time and saying, "Why is Marco Rubio calling you?" And I said, I don't know, but I bet it's exciting.
So he used to do what you are. I mean, he used to be in the Group of Eight. He was the chairman of the Intel Committee. Do you consider yourself timely and adequately notified by the executive branch of what they ought to do?
Yes, no question, Hugh. And they have kept me and my committee and my other committee, the Armed Services Committee, apprised of the operations we've had in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific all along. And I think within 24 hours, gosh, less than that probably, within maybe 12 or 16 hours, I had spoken not just to President Trump, but every man that was on stage behind him Saturday. That's his core team, the people who are the architects of this policy and who carried it out. Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, General Dan Kane, John Ratcliffe, Stephen Miller. I'd spoken to every single one of them before Saturday night. I did not get advance notice, you're correct, nor would I expect to ever get advance notice about such a mission. This is an operation, as we heard from the President and General Kane, that was heavily dependent on contingent factors like light and weather conditions in Venezuela and precise knowledge of Maduro's whereabouts at any given moment. That's not the kind of thing that you expect advance notice to Congress for, nor for that matter do I expect advance notice every time the executive carries out an arrest of a drug trafficker, whether it's in Venezuela or in Arkansas. Again, just in the ordinary course of affairs, that's not the kind of thing that the executive branch calls up to the legislature and gives them notice of.
Now, Senator Cotton, the president said in his Saturday morning press conference, Congress leaks. And we know by that sometimes political actors leak. But I also thought the Chinese and the Iranians are heavily invested in Venezuela. They probably try and monitor our electronic activity and our signals intelligence. I think that there's even a risk of leaking by people who don't intend to leak if they just say the wrong thing in the wrong cell phone. Is that part of the issue?
It could be, Hugh, and you don't even necessarily have to know what people are saying. All of a sudden, if there's a flurry of activity of calls going out to certain key congressional leaders, you can probably figure out that something must be up. If you had access to that knowledge, I don't want to confirm or deny any such access, but I think it's best when we had invested as much time and effort as our government did in tracking Maduro's movements, in putting the forces in place to effect this arrest, that there's under no circumstances do you want to risk operational security. And what incredible operational security we had going on for more than 4 days.
The other thing that's incredible is the level of unfamiliarity with special operations by our national news anchors yesterday. And Secretary Rubio spanked them all. But my question to you is, when President Trump was asked on Air Force One what happens next, he said, it depends, which I think is exactly the right answer. What will you be looking for from the Venezuelan regime, which is still in place, including their Interior Secretary, minister, who's not like Doug Burgum, that's the secret police down there, head of their military, and their new acting president? What do you think they ought to be doing right now?
It depends heavily on their actions. As Secretary Rubio said just before me on Face the Nation yesterday, we're not going to listen to what they say in speeches or press releases. Or what they say to us privately. We're going to monitor actions. And until just 2 days ago, those folks that you just mentioned, the vice president, the interior minister, the defense minister, were tied at the hip in league with Nicolas Maduro. They've been sanctioned. Some of them have been indicted like him. It's always possible to turn over a new leaf, Hugh. We've seen it in Syria with Ahmed al-Shara, a former al-Qaeda ISIS leader. We saw it in Libya with Gaddafi after he came in from the cold when we scared him straight after the Iraq invasion. But those cases involved concrete, clear concessions to U.S. interests, or a longer track record of moving in the right direction. We don't have either of that yet in Venezuela. So the Venezuelans need to take certain actions, I would say, to prove that it's going to be a new day in Venezuela. They could release all political prisoners today, kick out the worst of the worst, the Iranians, the Cubans, Hezbollah, Hamas, and so forth. They could welcome back the opposition and guarantee their safe passage into Venezuela. These are all actions that could be taken immediately that don't prejudice any future actions on the nature of Venezuela's government, who's going to lead it, when there might be elections, so on and so forth. Those are things that they can do to prove that they got the message that it needs to be a new day in Venezuela. And as President Trump said, if they don't, well, he reserves the right to do something to Rodriguez and anyone else, just like we did to Maduro, or maybe worse.
Now, last question, Senator Cotton. The president has threatened the Iranian regime if they murder dissidents in the streets. What ought they to be thinking right now? If they're the mullahs or the IRGC or the head of the army, we got 1 minute.
Well, I mean, Hugh, between the president's threat, which I welcomed very much, to stand up to the Iranian regime if they massacre their citizens protesting, unlike what Barack Obama did in 2009, you can add their great concern when they saw the American military swoop into Venezuela and now Venezuela's illegitimate dictator. So I imagine they're a little antsy in Tehran today. And I would urge them, as Secretary Rubio said, to take Donald Trump seriously. Don't believe he's bluffing. Don't believe that you can play him in this. And don't massacre your own citizens.
Well
Actually
said.
affect the changes they're demanding.
Senator Tom Cotton, Chairman of the Intel Committee, thank you for joining me on a busy day for you, and I appreciate the time. Happy New Year to everyone. And if you get those calls in the middle of the night, try and answer them and let your wife sleep. Thank you, Senator. I especially want to welcome our new affiliates in Pensacola, Florida, WNRP. Welcome, Panhandle. We are so glad to have you, especially all you pilots in training down there in the Navy base in Pensacola. That's where my son-in-law trained many, many years ago, and so I know it well. I've been only down there once, actually, over the years. We had an Alliance Defending Freedom conference there once. Great, great part of the country. And a Triple Talk, 1270 AM, 102.3, 103.3 FM in northern Michigan, WMKT. Welcome aboard. I have regular sponsors. You'll hear me talk about them often. One of them is, for example, Consumer Cellular. And I really want to underscore it right now. You should call them today. It's a new year. Get a new cellular plan. Save some money for yourself. Their phone number is pretty easy to remember. 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. My code, my special offer is Hugh, H-U-G-H. If you make the switch, it takes about 20 minutes to switch from big cellular to one that actually has your back. You make sure you use my name, Hugh, and you'll get your second month of service for free. Now, let me tell you, do you know how much you're paying for your cell phone as you start? Here's a New Year's resolution. Look at your phone bill. In fact, have it in front of you when you go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. That's consumercellular.com/Hugh, or you call 1-800-411-4454. Have your cell phone bill in front of you so you know how much you're paying for data. And you can talk about whether you're paying too much. You almost certainly are. If you've got an unlimited data plan and you're 50 years or older, this is for you. 2 lines of unlimited data, $60 a month. You can't beat that. 2 lines, unlimited data, consumercellular.com/Hugh. You cannot beat that. You can have savings and service equal to the very best service in the United States. You will get with Consumer Cellular savings and service. Don't settle for one or the other. Get them both. But remember, my code is Hugh. Whether you call or go online, you got to use my name, Hugh, if you want that second month free. Let me also tell you, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. Now, I mention that at least once an hour, and I tell you about it once an hour because it's vital to the station, vital to my career, and I have been using this now for 13 years. January, I turned it over. 13 years, I take it every day. Why? Because I used to be a runner. Then I was a racer once. I was sitting with a youngster yesterday. The son of my old dear friend came up and had breakfast with us. He lives down in San Diego. And he just clocked a 2:33 marathon in Sacramento. Now that's got smoke coming out of your ears. My personal best is 3:12:30. But it's better than anyone else in my family, so I don't care. But we were talking about running, and I said, I take this every day, relieffactor.com, to you, so you know. I used to be a racer, dozen marathons. Then I became a runner. You're racing if you're under 8 minutes a mile. You're running if you're between 8 and 10. You're trundling, and I'm now a trundler, if you're doing between 10 and 15 minutes a mile. And you're just walking fast if you're over 50 minutes a mile, and that's fine. Just move. But if you're moving, you're going to get aches and pains. If you get aches and pains, it's a sign that you're healthy, or at least you're doing the best that you can to stay healthy. And that's where Relief Factor comes in. All natural Relief Factor helps your body's anti-inflammatory system keep you feeling great. Put away the over-the-counter meds. Just go with Icarian curcumin, resveratrol, omega once a day. Once you've got it up. I sent 2 bags of this to a buddy of mine who has lower back pain. And I'm hoping to hear that it's worked. It works for at least 7 out of 10 people. Love it. It's the only supplement I've taken in more than 20 years. A lot of supplements offer me a lot of money to take them, and I just say, no thanks, don't want to do it, not interested. And the reason is simple. I feel great. I take efforts. The Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I do our best to stay in shape every day, doing the right things. For me, it's trundling. For her, it's the gym and Pilates and all the different things, bar class, all the different things that you do. I just like to move, and I go up the implacable hill. And some days the implacable hill beats me, and most of the days I beat it. But no matter what the day is, I take my Relief Factor. I encourage you to call 1-800-4 and the word relief, or just go to relieffactor.com and sign up. Coming up after the break, Vic Mattis is going to be here. But before we go here's Chuck Schumer. Actually, let's play the good news. Cut number 21.
Which brings me to this. 2026 is an election year. Election years have a way of ramping up the politics at a time when we simply can't afford more of that in Minnesota. In September, I announced that I would seek a historic third term as Minnesota's governor. And I have every confidence that if I gave it my all, we would win the race.
All right, stop. He's still lying. He's still lying. I'm really confident if I give it my all, we win. No, you can't. You've had the bottom fall out on you. Everybody in Minnesota knows you're incompetent. Everyone in the country knows you're incompetent. Go home, take your state pension, and stay away from microphones. They're not good for you, Governor Walz. Now, Republicans run a serious candidate. Minnesota needs a serious Republican to clean up the mess up there. Vic Mattis is the Free Beacon arts and culture and weekend editor. If you're not reading the Free Beacon, you should be. He's also the co-host of the Getting Hammered podcast, which is back. Vic Mattis, Happy New Year to you. How was your New Year's Eve party?
Happy New Year to you, Hugh. It was a great party. I did make that pitcher of Manhattans that I mentioned on your show previously. That would be 40 ounces of bourbon and 20 ounces of vermouth. 60 ounces, good to the last drop. In the words of Teddy Roosevelt, all gone by the end of the night.
All gone. Now, Vic, I got to say about the last episode of Getting Hammered, I was a little bit disappointed at the fact that you were mocking the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And I myself have never had a Pop-Tart. Not one. Not in all of my years on this planet. But I still think they're a staple of many homes, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's something, well, at least when I was a high schooler, you're on the go. You know, you're usually crashing on something, you know, homework that you haven't done, a paper that's due. And, you know, your mom is probably busy doing other things. Maybe she's making a lunch for you or not, who knows? But you don't have time to sit down for a full breakfast. Sometimes you got to get on the road. You got to get in your car and get to school. Grab the Pop-Tart. Pop it in the toaster. It's good to go.
That's what leads me to Mr. and Mrs. Maduro, who've had a change in circumstance. Whether or not they liked Pop-Tarts doesn't really matter anymore. What do you think? What do you think he's thinking in his Brooklyn cell right now?
I don't know. Maybe he's thinking, what would Manuel Noriega do at a time like this? You know, I mean, this is what everybody's thinking. They're channeling back to the Manuel Noriega's, you know, the collapse of his regime and his takedown, which took several days for the U.S. military for that exfiltration operation. And I think Noriega did spend about 17 years in a U.S. prison before being sent out to, I think, France and then Panama. I don't know if he can get out of this. On the other hand, he might be hopeful that they have a very old judge who's very quirky in his ways, and maybe he might throw a wrench in this whole operation. He is maybe hoping that the Trump administration gets caught up in the fervor and forgets something on the fine, you know, on the dotted line to fill out properly, and he can get somehow released. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's mounds of evidence that have been compiled since the 2020 indictment in the Southern District of New York, the narco-terrorism, the drug trafficking. There's a lot to connect him to, and he has to worry about that. He'll get his legal representation. This is the United States of America, after all. But if I were him, I would not be thinking I'd be heading back home anytime soon, nor would I think would he be wanted back home.
Well, I got to ask you, Vic, I'm a little bit surprised that a district court judge in the Northern District of California has not yet ordered his return to Venezuela, as they have done with Abrego, right? There's got to be a district court that will, direct the Trump administration to reverse what they've done somewhere. It won't stand, but someone will do it.
What is the ACLU doing at this moment? And where are they filing in a state or a city that's sympathetic to their cause and to leftist causes? This is how they've been able to, obstruct the Trump administration every step of the way, even going up to the Supreme Court when it came to things like tariffs. We shouldn't jinx it, Hugh. I mean, or hold our breath. I think there's still tomorrow.
I think it makes every American abroad, whether in uniform or not, safer. I think that every single American benefits from what happened on Saturday. Do you agree with me?
Yes, whether or not they like to admit it, we're talking about the reduction of fentanyl entering into the United States. A lot of people have died because of fentanyl overdoses, and it's coming out of Venezuela largely. Maybe a lot of listeners know people personally. I certainly do. People who have died from fentanyl overdoses. It is a terrible thing. And you're looking at a reduction already in drug overdose, opioid deaths in 2024. That trend will probably continue. And it's not unrelated to the drop in both illegal immigration across the southern border, and of course, what's happening in Venezuela.
Now, I am surprised. I really have to say, I am surprised by the number of people who've gone on the air to pronounce that it was illegal and that Congress needed to be notified. It wasn't illegal, and Congress didn't. Senator Cotton was just on the air with me saying he's perfectly satisfied with the call he got at 3:30 in the morning on Saturday from Secretary Rubio, who used to have the job that Senator Cotton has now, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. What do you think of these people? Do they just reflexively, because Trump did it, have to be against it?
That's part of it, Hugh, definitely. If, for example, when the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, said that people should dress better on airplanes, just to stick it to Trump, people dressed even slobbier than they already do. So that was one thing. If Trump says water and air are good for you, they're going to do everything in their power to say it's bad for you. So that's one part of it. And the other part is something that Mark Halperin had said recently, which is say what you will about Trump derangement syndrome. One of the things it causes is amnesia. And so suddenly people do forget about Obama droning an American citizen. He didn't, get a charge or a warrant for that. And certainly going back to, let's say, Bill Clinton, and launching strikes in Serbia, or our involvement with boots on the ground in Somalia. So suddenly those things are forgotten, or they'll say that these are very terrible precedents, including Panama, that we're, having to abide by. But the fact is, there are precedents.
Lots of precedents. And that brings me finally to Chuck Schumer and Democrats. Does any Democrat other than John Fetterman, have you seen one come out and say, good for the good old USA, Venezuelans deserve freedom, free, frequent, and fair elections, and free markets? Have you seen any Democrats say that?
No. They seem to be in lockstep, as you were mentioning, with the exception of the Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, who was on Fox this morning, talking, in fact, about how you have to, give credit to where it's due, regardless of the president, regardless of how you feel about President Trump. Having him removed is a good thing. And there are, for example, James Hohmann had an editorial in the Washington Post saying this is a good thing. And of course, their readers went ballistic over that position because, again, if Trump did it, it has to be bad. But they don't realize that if they take a step back at how foolish that makes them look. And there are Venezuelans who are saying, have you talked to us, people in Doral, not the protesters in New York, but the people in Venezuela and here in this country, they are happy.
Yeah, I think Florida got redder over the weekend. Very, very much so. Lots of Venezuelans in Florida who had to go there because of the tyranny of Nicolas Maduro. Vic Mattis, good to talk to you. Follow him on X at Victorino Mattis. Go and like and subscribe to Getting Hammered that he and Mary Catherine Ham bring to you at least weekly. I got to tell you what a difference a few years makes. Chuck Schumer, 2020 on the Senate floor, cut number 19.
He brags about all these things he wants to do or is doing, but his actions belie his words. Maybe the best metaphor was his claim to bring democracy to Venezuela. There was a big policy there. It flopped. If the policy was working, Juan Guaido wouldn't be in the balcony here. He'd be in Venezuela. He'd be sitting in the president's palace, or at least waging a fight to win. He's here. And the president brags about his Venezuela policy? Give us a break. He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began.
And then yesterday, on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, cut number 20.
Senator, thank you for joining us this morning. Let me just start out. Do you think it's a good thing that Maduro has been removed from office?
Look, Maduro is a horrible, horrible person. But you don't treat lawlessness with other lawlessness. And that's what's happened here. The American people this morning, George, are scratching their heads in wonderment and in fear of what the president has proposed. The United States will run Venezuela. We have learned through the years when America tries to do regime change and nation building in this way, the American people pay the price in both blood and in dollars.
You heard Secretary Rubio there. He says the United States has the authority to do what they're doing.
They
right
do
now.
not. They do not.
Why not?
He couldn't even answer your question. There is no authority to go. They did not just do ships off the water. They went inside Venezuela, bombed civilian as well as military places. And it's a violation of the law to do what they did without getting the authorization of Congress.
It isn't, but what's amazing is he did a backflip. And Chuck Schumer is doing the Biden thing. And I'm beginning to wonder about, he's looking down to read his notes. I don't know if any of you noticed that. If you have to be watching on the Salem News Channel to know that. If you're just listening on the radio, you wouldn't know that. He's reading his notes. It's the Joe Biden thing or the Karine Jean-Pierre thing, where you don't know what you believe, so you look down at what is in front of you and you begin to read notes. Absolutely, the president has the authority to do so. Article 2, Section 2. He's the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Army and Navy. Article 2, Section 1, he's the head of the executive branch. There was an indictment. There was an executed warrant. Secretary Rubio also noted, we even read Nicolas Maduro and his spouse their rights as we helicoptered him on the way out. It's an what is it about the left? I know what it is about Chuck Schumer. He's desperately afraid he's going to get thrown out of office in 2 years, and he probably will be. But what is it that they are desperately afraid of to say, good job, American military. Everyone in Venezuela, do the right thing. Stop killing, torturing, holding political prisoners. Let's have free, fair, and frequent elections. Let's have the free market. You can turn a page, as Senator Cotton. What is wrong with these people? It was like the Winter Olympic of bad takes in the aftermath of the American Operation Absolute Resolve that got Nicolas Maduro and his spouse out of the military base in the middle of Caracas and to the United States, where he's under arrest and awaiting trial in Brooklyn. And the bad takes mounted up like so many books in a library. Luckily, I am friends with Dan Runde. Dan is a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He's the author of the wonderful book, The American Imperative. And by the time it was noon on the West Coast, I'd gotten an 8-page briefing paper on Venezuela from Dan on Saturday morning. It makes it sound like he's the desk officer for the agency for Venezuela. He's not. He's just actually pretty smart about South America. Dan, welcome. When last we met at our favorite watering hole in downtown D.C. in December, you gave me the rundown of South America. The good guys are Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile right now. The bad guys are Cuba always, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. So, with that taking off point, what do you make of what happened on Saturday, the early morning hours of Saturday, and what questions are still on the table? You got a lot of runway. Run with it, Mr. Runde.
Thanks a lot, Hugh. I'm happy to be here. It was like a late Christmas present to see what happened to Nicolas Maduro and his wife. These are very bad people. Venezuela is a complicated place, and a lot of people can justifiably talk about all the complexities of Venezuela. But President Trump, with this amazing action, with the help of our amazing military and our amazing intelligence services, cut the Gordian knot, cut the complexity, and made it simple again. He's created a new scenario for us to operate from. He wants 5 things from Venezuela. He wants Venezuela to stop the drugs. He wants Venezuela to cooperate with justice. He wants to see the country stabilized. He wants to see a normal energy operation, normal energy policy in Venezuela. It's been run in a crazy way. And President Trump wants Venezuela to stop exporting chaos. I was so happy to see this happen. And I thought the operation that was carried out over the weekend was one of the best things that I've heard in a long time. I mean, it's been a year of a lot of good news in foreign policy, whether it's the operation in Iran and now what's happened in Venezuela. And so I think we owe a big debt of gratitude to President Trump, our amazing military, and our amazing intelligence service. And he has created new leverage on the remaining Maduro regime in the hands of Delcy Rodriguez to say, look, We've got the top two capos of your mafia state under arrest, and we're also holding your oil exports under embargo until you make some changes. So he's got a lot of leverage, and so I think it's really an exciting moment. I'm really gratified to see where we are.
Dan Rundy, let's ground this in the reality of the complexity that you mentioned at the beginning. You immediately told me, Hugh, remember there are 23,000 Americans there. Do you think anyone would dare touch an American in Venezuela right now from the security services? Would they not be asking to get blown up?
They're asking to get blown up. We talk a lot in the foreign policy world about resetting deterrence. President Trump, with this action, really reset deterrence. That's just a fancy way of saying you better not mess with us, and that there's a credible threat. After what happened over the weekend, there's a credible threat. So if they messed with American citizen Venezuela, it would not be a really good idea for the security services to do that. It is a complicated place. It's a divided society in many ways.
Did you freeze on me there, Dan? Yeah.
Certainly at the very least. Right. What we want to see is certainly behavioral change. You know, I know that Senator Cotton was on the show earlier today, and he talked about this on the Sunday shows, that we want to have behavioral change in Venezuela. Like I said, stop the drugs, cooperate with justice, behave like a normal country, and that, you know, Venezuela used to be a really wealthy place. It was wealthier than places like Chile 40 years ago. It was a stable place. It was an ally of the United States. And under Chavez and Maduro, it became a partner of Iran and let in Hezbollah, partnered with the Russians and the Chinese Communist Party. And then, you know, had this very mobbed up relationship with the Cubans. It's a very bad place.
Now, Dan Rundy, one of your data points you sent me, and people should have friends like Dan so you don't have to talk through your hat. I got this long memo from Dan on things I needed to know. No, it was great. I knew what I was talking about on Kilmeade last night because I'd read it. I had no idea that between 20 and 30% of the population actually consider themselves Chavistas. Who are they and why are they Chavistas?
You know, I made a trip to Venezuela in 2012. And one of the things that shocked me, this was right after Hugo Chavez had died. And what shocked me when I was in Caracas, Venezuela, was that you drove around and you did see some signs of support for the Chavez-Maduro regime. It's not the majority of the people, but there is a percentage of the people in the country that support this government. Some of it is because they give them jobs. Some of it is because they give them money. Some of it is because there are poor parts of Venezuela that maybe had been overlooked in the past, and this government had given them free stuff, if I can put it that way, and had sort of bought allegiance, if I can put it that way. So there is a percentage of the population that does support the regime. It's not a majority. It's probably 20%. It could be as high as 30%. Nobody knows because it's an authoritarian regime. But with President Trump's action over the weekend, we have the opportunity to have a different future for Venezuela. The vast majority of people don't want this government.
The Interior Minister,
there were elections. Sorry, go ahead.
The Interior Minister there is not like Doug Burgum, right? He's not taking care of the national parks. He's the secret police. What are the odds?
There's a whole series. There's a whole authoritarian regime setup. There's the military. There's the secret police. They also have armed citizens that are aligned with the government. That are these are sort of like your local neighborhood militia, if I can put it that way. That's on the payroll of the Chavistas. So it's a police state. It's an authoritarian regime. They have repressed human rights. They have cheated on elections multiple times, including most recently in 2024. The person who won the election, Edmundo Gonzalez, was not allowed to take possession of the government. So you've had this is a thug regime. It's a narco-terrorist state.
What do the other countries of South America think about this? Obviously, Colombia has gone left, Bolivia has gone right, Chile's gone right, Argentina's gone right. But within the region, what do they think about swooping in and grabbing the top narco and then getting out?
So most of the countries, how about this? Many of the countries in the region, our allies, are relieved to see this happen. Argentina has supported this, you've had Paraguay and Bolivia have supported this. So serious countries with serious leaders have gotten behind President Trump's action. You have a crazy person in the President Petro of Colombia, who's insane. Now, thankfully, he is leaving later this year. There are elections in Colombia. He can't run again. I do think him having a fight with President Trump helps the cuckoo left candidate who's trying to replace him. And so we need to be a little bit careful of kind of playing into President Petro of Colombia's getting into fights with President Trump, because there's some percentage of the Colombian population that, that supports crazy President Petro. But he's a substance abuser. He's a person who makes a lot of bad personal choices. He's nuts. So he's not a serious person. Unfortunately, the president of Mexico has also chosen to take a similar position to President Petro. But overall, it's a collection of loser countries like Cuba and Nicaragua who've screamed. But really, I think there's significant relief. You look at the joy in the faces, and you've seen dancing in the streets by ordinary Venezuelans. 8 million Venezuelans you had to flee the country because of the mismanagement of this narco state in Venezuela. They've all left. It's one of the largest refugee populations in the world are Venezuelans who've left Venezuela in the last 20 years because this wealthy country was driven into the ground by this mafia group financed by drugs.
All right, when we come back, Dan Runde's going to stay here, and we're going to talk about the 3 C's: Cuba, China, and Chevron. And Dan's going to have a memo ready on the implications for each of those 3, and he's going to have advice for Chevron on what to do next. And then he's going to tell us about Nicaragua and Cuba. Don't go anywhere, America. Runde knows what he's talking about, which is unlike about 95% of the people I've seen on media this week. Dan Runde is my guest, senior fellow at the Center for Strategic International Studies in Washington, D.C., and one of the few subject matter experts on Central and South America. Dan, a few years ago, when Secretary Pompeo would hold his Madison dinners, the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I went, and I sat across from Mike Wirth, who's the CEO of Chevron, and I just thought, this is the smartest guy in the room other than not named Pompeo. If you're running Chevron, you've obviously got subject matter experts and country experts. What ought they to be considering right now in the aftermath of the Maduro expatriation to the United States?
So Chevron is the only American company operating currently in Venezuela. It's been granted a special license by previously the Biden administration, as well as the current Trump administration. Other American oil companies like ExxonMobil had their assets nationalized in the last 15 years. And so it's been a risky and complicated arrangement for Chevron to operate in Venezuela. And there have been a number of reasons for that. Given what happened over the last 3 days, Chevron's in a unique first mover advantage because it has assets on the ground and has maintained a relationship. It hasn't broken its relationship either with the United States or with Venezuela. Now, at the high watermark of oil production in Venezuela was 1996, and I think it was 3.5 million barrels of oil a day. And there's lots of what's the price of oil and a whole bunch of other things that would be needed. Right now, it's about 500,000 to 1 million barrels of oil a day is sort of what they estimate for Venezuela. So to get back to that kind of level is an enormous amount of money. And there's a whole complicated string of things you'd have to unpack, like who controls these assets? Did they promise these assets as part of loans to people? Is it safe to invest in the country? Is there some level of security, et cetera, et cetera? But assuming you could get all of those things, the estimates are $50 billion, $100 billion. Nobody really knows, and it could take 5 or 10 years to get back to the levels of production, back to the high watermark of oil production in Venezuela. So could Chevron do something like that? Potentially, yes. They spend about $20 billion a year on big investment projects. They have a number of big investment projects in places like Kazakhstan and Angola. They do a lot of energy investing in the United States, thanks to fracking and the energy miracle we've seen in the last 10 years in America with fracking. And we owe Chevron a debt of thanks for they're one of the folks that have helped make fracking possible for America.
So if they're doing a whiteboard, and no doubt they've been whiteboarding exercise all weekend. I've been at CSIS when Dan Rundy has run one of these seminars, and I'm astonished by what kind of factors they have to take into account before they make another dollar's worth of investment. What's on their whiteboard up in Northern California where Chevron is? I don't think they've left yet. What's on their whiteboard?
I think there's several things. One would be what they first want to talk to the United States government and say, is this something you want to, to make sure that they're following the law and they want to obey the rules of the United States. They always, they're a good citizen. They're a great company. Then they'd want to make sure that if they invested, that they weren't going to have their assets nationalized later. What kind of guarantees are they for that? And what kind of government are we talking about? And then, so I think there's any number of different questions like that. I mean, there's a lot of debt in Venezuela. Some of that debt is associated with the energy business, whether it's to suppliers or whether it's saying, hey, please government of China, lend me some money and I'll use as collateral this oil well or the assets in this oil field. So they'd want to understand, like, well, if I drill in this oil field, are the assets already kind of spoken for in some loan that they've loaned to China? So there's a whole series of complicated things like that.
Well, who is going to be driving the day-to-day bus on this over at the Department of State and at the Central Intelligence Agency? Do you expect that there's a task force on what I'll call normalization of relations with a bad actor regime? That's what we're trying. It's like Libya following the invasion of Iraq. They opened their kimono and then we went and got their WMD and we did a deal. It was very secret. Where will that be run out of, Dan? Who's going to have the lead? I know Secretary Rubio can't do everything. He's running everything right now.
No, Secretary Rubio can't do everything, but I expect this is going to largely fall to the Department of State, but there'll be an interagency team. I also think what's important to you is I think all of the folks in the Trump administration are cognizant of the experience of Iraq, which I was supportive of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, and I supported what President Bush did. But I think that I may be perhaps in the minority, but I would say that I think many people saw it as a cautionary tale. So I don't think we want to I think they're trying to entice and work with the government that is currently, in place to try and do behavioral change on a number of fronts. Stop the drugs, as I said earlier, cooperate with justice, stabilize the country, normalize the energy sector. And so I think part of it is going to be trying to work with the existing illegitimate government, if we can put it that way, in place. My hope and expectation is that this is they've been using the word transition, that this is ultimately a transition government, and that over the next period of time, maybe over the next 6 to 12 months, we either have hopefully new elections and the good guys win. Ultimately, I think Edmundo Gonzalez, who should be the rightful president of Venezuela, and Maria Corina Machado, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, who should be the rightful vice president of Venezuela, will get a chance to run again, and that we give a chance for the Venezuelan people to have real, free, and fair elections as a result of what President Trump did over the weekend. And as a result, we have a government that's a legitimate government that we can actually work with. That would be my hope, but that may be 6 or 12 months down the road. But in the meantime, we have to work with these thugs. You
mentioned to me that there are a lot of guns in Venezuela in the hands of a lot of different people. So we don't want to send a bunch of Americans in there with guns because they become targets like they did in the Sunni Triangle after the invasion of Iraq, and we weren't ready for it. Do you expect the internal security services there to turn over a leaf? Is that the best case scenario? That they talk to each other, they don't want to end up in a Brooklyn jail.
No, right, exactly. I think they saw what happened to their head capo, and I think they're thinking, maybe I don't want to get droned, or I don't want to have door kickers come for me in the middle of the night. I do think that's an incentive, and it's a way of which to concentrate the mind on behavioral change. You've heard this over the last several days from supporters of the administration, and I'm very supportive of what the administration did. I thought this was phenomenal. Is we want to have behavioral change with this regime, with these really bad actors. Now, do I think we want these people to be in power forever? No, we want these. Ultimately, we'd like to see. I think we ought to want to see these people go, and to have a return to the kind of Venezuela that we had 40 years ago, which was a stable, prosperous country and ally of the United States that wasn't exporting chaos and wasn't exporting drugs. It wasn't.
I'll be right back with Dan Runde. We turn to Cuba next, and then China. And we're going to leave Iran to the side, I think, today. But don't go anywhere, because Runde actually knows what he's talking about, and that's very rare in media today on the Venezuelan talking heads I've seen this weekend. Blessed to have Dan Runde with me, senior advisor at the CSIS, one of the keystone think tanks of Washington, D.C., and he's the author of the book, The American Imperative, which is really a remarkably excellent book. Dan, let's talk about Cuba. Secretary Rubio mentioned it in passing, that it's run by semi-incoherent 93-year-old Raul Castro and a current dictator. They get their energy from Venezuela. Their security services didn't prove to be very good. What does this mean for Cuba?
Okay, so Cuba used to get a lot of subsidies from the Soviet Union, and when the Soviet Union fell, there was like a 10-year period where they didn't get any help from really anybody, and they were in deep, deep trouble. Then Chavez showed up and bailed out Cuba for about 20 years. And as time has gone on, because the Chavistas and Maduro folks have mismanaged their economy and driven their economy into the ground, they had less and less free oil to throw around, subsidized oil to throw around. And then with sanctions that the U.S. has imposed, including and especially with the Trump administration, it's been even harder and harder to get discounted free oil, even if there was any to give out from Venezuela to Cuba. So they have a broken economy. Thankfully, Fidel Castro is dead, and I think Raul Castro is also dead. It's run by a guy named Diaz-Canel, who's sort of like their chosen thug, communist leader. This guy Diaz-Canel recognized that they're in deep trouble in Cuba economically. They've had a drop in tourism. They don't have they have a broken, fake, failed socialist economy, because socialism doesn't work, as you know, and so they have had an ideological and security partnership. So the Cubans provided bodyguards to Maduro, and I think you saw that the Cubans are having 2 official days of mourning because they recognize that our armed forces killed 32 of their security and.
Oh, we've got you're back, Dan. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, just that, that Cuba and Venezuela have had an enmeshed relationship for 25 years. Venezuela's run out of oil to give them. As Venezuela's run out of oil to give them, Cuba's in deeper and deeper economic trouble because Venezuela was sort of Cuba's sugar daddy for a long time, and Cuba in return provided security and intelligence services to Venezuela. And as you saw, the 32 bodyguards or security folks from Cuba that were killed by our armed forces because they were protecting Maduro, it says a lot. So I think hopefully Cuba's on its last legs. And can you imagine if in the next 12 months we had a stable transition to something a heck of a lot better in Venezuela. We have the mullahs leave town in Tehran, and sometime in the next 24 months, God willing, the bad guys exit stage left in Cuba. all because of the actions of President Trump. It's amazing.
Now, with the embargo that is there, do you expect the United States Navy to maintain its armada and to continue to attempt to embargo the export of hot oil from Venezuela?
Certainly, I mean, President Trump is always thinking about leverage. And so you heard Secretary Rubio talk about that they're going to continue to use, just as they have the illegitimate leader Maduro and the First Lady both indicted criminals, right? Basically, both indicted subjects. That's one form of leverage, is to have these two thugs in Brooklyn. To have an embargo on the energy is also another form of leverage that we have over this illegitimate thug regime. So absolutely, I expect now whether or not that aircraft carrier, and I know you and your listeners have become very educated on the Navy because of I'm a longtime listener of your show, that you've had a lot of naval experts on your show. At some point, the aircraft carrier will probably have to go back into port. I don't know, sometime maybe in the spring. But we have a lot of military assets in the Caribbean, and we're using assets like the airfields in Puerto Rico, et cetera. And so I think we're going to continue to have all the assets that we need, whether it's an aircraft carrier or others, to maintain leverage on energy. I don't expect us to release that anytime soon, because it's a form of leverage, and President Trump likes using leverage strategically.
Do you think, Dan, we got 30 seconds, and then we'll come back and talk about China, that the president will name the equivalent of the fellow we sent to Iraq in 2003, whose name is escaping me right now? Right. Do you expect one of these sort of super bureaucrats?
No,
okay.
I don't, because I think what they're trying to do is, if I can use the term, empower the current thug leaders to do the right thing and trying to use behavior change to try and get them to do it.
Stand by, one more segment coming up. Don't go anywhere. Rundy is on tap. My final segment with Dan Rundy, Senior Fellow at the Center for Strategic International Studies in Washington, D.C., author of the book, The American Imperative. Dan, it turns out China gets about 4 to 5% of its oil, a very specific kind of oil, from Venezuela. And it's refined by independent refiners in China called teapots, and it's used in heavy construction. That's now going to stop. What do you expect the Chinese reaction to this to be, and what kind of impact will it have on China?
Well, you've got a really thoughtful audience, but I was surprised to hear this, and maybe your audience will be surprised to hear this. I was talking to someone in preparation for this session, talking about China. And it occurred to my friend, and I agree with my friend, that because China sees the world, they're the middle kingdom. People have heard that expression, that they're the center of the world. And they sent a delegation of a senior ambassador to visit Maduro, I think like 6 hours or 12 hours before. There's a photo op of him receiving this delegation 6 or 12 hours before. They were still in their beds, and they couldn't mobilize or do anything during this time. And so I would not be surprised if the Chinese thought the Americans, quote unquote, did this, especially around the visit of our high level delegation. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but I can tell you that the way they look at the world and they see themselves as the world revolves around them, that we somehow did this as a signal to them. Now, there is some truth to that in the sense that they buy a lot of oil. They buy some oil from Venezuela. The oil from Venezuela is this grungy, dirty crude. It's hard to process, as you were describing. And they also have lent a ton of money to Venezuela. Some of it, they had hoped that Venezuela might be part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Your listeners know that China's got this big initiative to build roads and infrastructure all over the world. And instead, they're getting buying less oil from Venezuela. The Venezuelans owe them something on the orders of magnitude of something like $40 billion. It's going to be hard for them to pay the Chinese back. And we were talking earlier in the segment about, okay, under what circumstances will people invest in Venezuela? One of the things we got to sort out is like, how much debt does Venezuela currently have? And a lot of it's owed to China. And will the current debtors be willing to take what's called a haircut and reduce some of the amount of debt that they have, or instead of paying back the debt in 2030, be willing to pay the debt, having the debt paid back in 2050, so that the amount of payments drops. So China's got a debt problem with Venezuela. China wants to buy oil from Venezuela, Iran, and Russia because they don't. If they ever wanted to invade Taiwan, they want to have a series of sources of supply that circumvent global sanctions on oil. And so Venezuela is one of their sources of supply that was sort of, let's call it semi-sanction free, if you will, if they ever. And so losing the Venezuelan oil is a headache for them. Not getting paid back their debt is a headache for them. And also the fact that they had some Chinese military equipment there that didn't work that well in this recent operation that we saw. So they're embarrassed, and they've got some headaches, both economic headaches, and they've got some energy headaches as a result of what's happened. I think that's all to the good, because I don't wish the Chinese Communist Party well at all.
What's interesting, Dan, and we'll wrap up on this, is that there are a lot of outcomes from this operation, which is a in and out 2.5 hour masterpiece of special operations. And Admiral McRaven was on the program last week. He said, we've been doing special ops for 20 years. We're getting really good at it. He wasn't talking about Venezuela, but he was talking about special ops. That one of the second order effects has got to be China worried about its supply, but Tehran's got to be worried about Donald Trump threatening them if they start mowing down dissenters in the street. Do you think that they take that threat more seriously on this Monday than they did last Friday?
Absolutely. I mentioned earlier this concept in foreign policy called deterrence, right? Resetting deterrence. It basically means like making credible threats. Donald Trump is making credible threats. He has basically said he says he's going to do something, and then he does it, as opposed to when President Obama said, I'm drawing a line in the sand, and didn't do anything. This resets deterrence, similar with the actions that the United States did with our allies Israel against the thug regime in Iran earlier last year. So I think absolutely, even from 5 days ago, there's a much more credible threat on the Iranian regime. And I think, thank goodness, President Trump came out last week and said, if you mess with the protesters on the ground, we're going to mess with you, thug regime Iran. I thought that was great. Compare that to President Obama, where he basically encouraged protesters, but then didn't protect them and didn't do anything. And so I think President Trump has been willing to step forward and say, I'm willing to protect the protesters, was a phenomenal act. And what happened in Venezuela makes it very clear that he's willing to back up those words with force, and thank goodness he's willing to do so.
Now, last question, Dan. Should we be willing to spend American dollars to help Venezuela stand up a stable government transition and then free and fair elections and a free market? Should we be willing to invest? If the bad guys realize that the clock is ticking, like it ran out of time for Maduro, and they want to work with us, ought we to spend American dollars there? Not soldiers, but dollars.
Yeah, I think this is a great question, I think there's a belief that the largest amount of oil reserves in the world are in Venezuela. The largest amount of gold reserves in the world are in Venezuela. Now, assuming they haven't been pillaged and we haven't been able to kind of get a real sense of what's going on or how much that's been spoken for with, borrowing money against it, et cetera. But there's a lot of resources. Venezuela, in theory, should be a rich country. So I do think certainly we should be, at least on a lending basis, be willing to provide some money on the front end to say, we're going to help get you back on your feet and lend you some money to do so. I think President Trump is right to say we should participate in the upside of a prosperous Venezuela, that American workers and American companies should be at the front of the line, since we've just helped given them a new opportunity. They got the best shot in 25 years. President Trump is providing the best shot in 25 years for Venezuela. And so the Venezuelan people...
That is a wonderful way to conclude. Dan Runde, R-U-N-D-E. I hope you write this up for people other than talking heads like me so that every American can read that. It's great to have an expert on hand who's willing to spend an hour with me. Thank you, Dan Runde. His book is The American Imperative. It's imperative that you get and read that if you want to understand what's going on in the world. So happy to have News Radio Pensacola, 92.3 WNRP, join the Hugh Hewitt universe. And not just because of the National Naval Aviation Museum, which is down there. I do talk a lot of Navy. There's a lot of Navy in my family. I'm a civilian. I don't know anything. But I talk to a lot of people who aren't. My son-in-law is active duty Navy and fighter pilot and all that good stuff. So I heard about Pensacola forever. And I've been there once. But now maybe I can get Relief Factor to build Relief Factor Studios South in Pensacola. That would be a good deal. We have Relief Factor Studio North, Relief Factor Studio Beltway, and Relief Factor Studio West. Maybe we can get Relief Factor Studio Pensacola going at 92.3 WNRP. That sounds good to me. It's a beautiful place. The National Seashore Beach is just an amazing beach. So welcome aboard. Great to have you join the Hugh Hewitt board. I am the Relief Factor Studio. This is Relief Factor. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you can see it, you can hear it. If you're listening on the radio, and you should take it every day. I do. And when you first order it, 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or you can go to their website, and I'll give that to you in a moment. You take 3 packets a day, Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, omega, for the first week, then 2 packets a day for the second week. Then you're on the packet a day for me, it's been 13 years with the turn of the calendar. And what it does is just supports your body anti-inflammatory system to reduce the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. And you ought to be doing the former. I got my 3 miles on the Implacable Hill this morning, but then went and began to do paperwork with AFTRA. AFTRA, the American Federation of Television Radio. First of all, I spent about half hour on the waiting line to talk to SAG-AFTRA, only to be told, no, you need to talk to AFTRA plans. So off I went to AFTRA plans and got nothing back from that. It's just very frustrating. But I got my 3 miles in before I got nothing done. But I'll just keep doing the Implacable Hill and the long distance on the weekends because Relief Factor keeps you in the game. You ought to try it every day. Bottom line on today, if you're new to the show, head over to my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. You'll find Senator Cotton there. Ambassador O'Brien will get Dan Runde's 4 segments up so that everyone can hear what it means. Dr. Oren on the Israeli perspective as well. Serious, good commentary. The news you need, the analysis you want from the guests who actually know what they're talking about. Please also follow me on X, Hugh Hewitt. Like and subscribe to my podcast. A lot of people who don't listen in the afternoon just begin the morning with the podcast, Highly Concentrated Hugh. It's available at the Salem Podcast Network. It's available at iTunes, at Spotify, wherever Highly Concentrated Hugh is. Download it every morning. A lot of you folks listen to me first thing on Tuesday morning because on Monday afternoon and evening, I'm the best that there is when it comes to giving you news, information, and guests who know what they're actually talking about. I want to thank Adam, Harley, James, and Generalissimo. Generalissimo is my non-producer who's been doing it for 25 years. Adam is the engineer. Harley runs all the wonderful television stuff, and James is just learning the business. And they all make it happen for you folks in Pensacola, so keep them in mind as well.